For everyone, hey, welcome to the latest Founders Live Conversations and Founders Live Academy. Today, we are joined by Dave Loftus from Radial Development Group. And here today, we are really talking about building world-class products, learning from Dave some of the advice that he has, maybe some stories of previous clients. We want to hear more about what Radial Development Group does, as well as, again, answer your questions if you're having challenges or you have thoughts of, hey, I'm thinking about building this or wanting to build that. That's what we're going to do. So, Dave, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks, Nick. It's really great to be here today and to be part of the Founders Live network and to be able to offer our help to anybody who is in need. So the first thing that I would say, just to kick this conversation off with a little bit of controversy, how about that, is you're not going to launch a world-class product. You're probably wrong about the thing that you think is a world-class product. And starting with that assumption and understanding that there are pieces that you misunderstand or that you see the problem slightly different than the mass market does, and that you probably understand the problem you're solving perfectly, but the solution to it is often a little different than what you think. So testing your expectations and your implementations as you go through the development process and building your company and finding market fit. That's the most important thing you can do. So maybe there's no such thing as world-class product. I mean, let's take Twitter, for example. So
yeah, good thought. And you're absolutely right in the sense of, as you get going and building your product, obviously you're starting from a place of learnings and, putting together the MVP, which we'll talk about here shortly. So yeah, it's, world-class. Hey, maybe never. But, I would say world-class based on your team and your approach to how you're wanting to solve the problem, world-class. Subjective, obviously. Hey, let's start with a little bit of background, even on yourself, and then let's go into learning a little bit more about Radial Development Group.
Well, I have been writing computer software since I was 9 years old. Way back when there was no cachet to being a computer programmer or a nerd or a geek. Back in the days of Apple IIs and Commodores, I imagine I'm dating myself, or hopefully telling people are hearing things that what are those? So, but I've programmed in everything from early BASIC through Pascal and COBOL to Apple's new language Swift and Google's new language Go and Ruby and Rails and Python. And since about 2007, my main job, if you'll take it, has been technical co-founder of 6 or 7 companies, depending on how you do the math. But basically, I've been the guy chained to the water heater in the basement, having no customer contact, dealing with a product owner who would call and say, "I need this and I need it yesterday." So I've done that for a long time, and in the last few years, I have been doing outwardly facing work for Radial Development Group, building network, evangelizing the kind of startup and product work that I'm assuming everybody who's here is interested in, on behalf of our team, and really have discovered a whole different love for entrepreneurship and technical company co-founding and that sort of a thing. On another note, Radial Development Group was founded 7 years ago by a close friend of mine And for most of that time, Ben worked for me on as an extra pair of hands, writing software and whatnot. After I sold my last company, he asked me to come work for him and do sort of the outreach stuff. And so I've been doing a lot of that, and we've tried to turn Radial Development Group into a people forward software development consultancy. We try to give the people who work for us all of the humanity that we can, starting with a large profile of paid vacation, the expectation that we won't require people to work scads and scads of overtime to accomplish Herculean tasks for clients who will continue asking for them if they know we'll keep giving up sleep in order to solve their problems. And realistically, we've built into a financial model where about 30% of our development time we can give away. We can donate to the community. We can spend developer time helping the community with problems, helping founders understand the nexus of technology and their problems, and really trying to give to the community of entrepreneurs out there in whatever way that we can. So that's us in a nutshell. That's me in a nutshell. So
yeah, thank you, and maybe it might help to describe I know it's hard to say a typical customer, but what sort of projects does Radial take on, and when would a startup or even a founding team be ready to engage with a company like Radial?
That's a tough one. We have worked we've worked on everything from embedded software in pet harnesses that are designed to monitor a dog or a cat's pulse and respiratory rate, activity level. We've worked for a product that's not on the market. We've been working on that for a couple of years, trying to hone that. We also have done work for companies that are very much in the market. They're rebuilding their stack, or they've graduated to they need new features. They need to go faster. They've found circumstances where they can't hire enough engineers, and so they've hired us and made it our problem to hire enough engineers. But basically, we do all kinds of things. We find a lot of joy in being able to sit down with somebody and say, "What does your roadmap look like for the next 6 or 8 months? What are the things that we can technically implement quickly that will have the most amount of impact on the business that you're launching?" And so we really adhere to Eric Ries's lean startup ethic, where what he basically says is, don't do anything at all unless you understand why you're doing it, understand the assumption that is causing you to do it, and can rapidly figure out if the thing that you're doing is right. We work. I know every software development consultancy out there right now will tell you that they work in an agile manner. Mostly, they'll tell you that they work as an agile development team, which basically means you do small amounts of work in series, and you deliver on a regular schedule. You deliver what's available. You expect developers to make commitments that I can do this in the week or the 2-week schedule. But what we've discovered is that for most agencies, that doesn't mean anything, because most people show up with a list of things they need, and the agency says it's going to cost this much money. And at that point, you're just waiting for that whole list to be built. we try to turn that on its head a little bit and do a series of two-week engagements. What can we do for you in the next 2 weeks? You need a software platform that allows somebody to log in, to change their password, and to see a dashboard, even if there's no information on that dashboard. We can do that in 2 weeks in X number of hours for a price. We do that. We deliver that to you. Then the next 2 weeks becomes a question of how do we refine that? How do we start doing things that are additive to that process? Or how do we break the huge feature that you have that you need? How do we break that into the most important kernel of that, and turn that into something that we can deliver in 2 weeks? And then from there we refine and refine and refine, and so we expect clients to be engaged in this process. We expect people to understand that the thing they think today might not be what they realize they need in 4 months. That we're gonna go on the journey, and we're gonna be a partner to developing something that's actually good at the end of the day. And so, in a nutshell, that's my spiel about why to work with Radial, and who works with Radial. And the nutshell version is, we love building things and making vision come to life, and watching entrepreneurs take what we've done and for in the example of the pet harness, go to manufacturing and start talking about the chipset problems that are happening because in China you can't get this chip, but you can get this other chip that's sort of the same thing but needs re-engineering to make it work, but we can get that one and they can build it. So things like that.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, thank you. You said something really interesting that I think is worth diving a little deeper on around the agile development process. And you brought up Eric Ries, and when early stage companies are in the early kind of phase of, they've identified a problem solution set, they've identified how we want to go about building something to solve that. Let's really start from the beginning. What do you advise them to do before they're laying any code, before they're, going to, as you say, before you do anything, these are the things that you want to think about. How should they go about thinking about that so that they're actually they're approaching this in the smartest way possible?
To answer that, one of the things that I think best illustrates this is a story about a company called Invited Home, invitedhome.com, if anybody wants to take a look. I was with Invited Home in 2010 when we basically built the core of the platform. I went through Techstars in Boulder with the team, and we started with the assumption that managing a vacation home for something like VRBO, or that work was onerous, and that there were ways that we could use technology to give vacation homeowners a platform that would automate as much of the work as we possibly could. And in going through this, we started talking to vacation homeowners. We were talking to venture capitalists anyway. How many of them have homes in Lake Tahoe or in Breckenridge or on the Gold Coast in Florida? We started talking to them, and invariably what we heard was the same. Every VC we would have this conversation with would say, "Oh yeah, I can imagine this would be a problem. This would be great." And we're like, "Well, what's your experience?" "Oh, my wife handles that." And then that was the end of the conversation, because they didn't really see the problem. And when we talked to the wives, they would be getting value out of the fact that they were doing the work. And so we started really pivoting this idea, realizing that the problem that Michael, my co-founder, saw in renting his house wasn't nearly as universally seen. And so one of the first things we did was we looked at, how do we book last minute trips. I want to go to Breckenridge for a weekend because I saw the weather report was that it was gonna put 14 inches of snow on Friday, and I was gonna have an epic weekend in Breckenridge. And I know there's an inventory out there that nobody's rented. How can I make an offer to the vacation homeowner? Hey, if I know you usually want $4,500 for a week, can I give you $1,000 for the weekend? And my friends and I can come up and do it. So this is 2010. And one of the hottest companies right then was the original business model of Groupon, where what they were doing was sort of a reverse auction, where they would say that I can give you this TV, the brand new 70-inch TV for $350 if 250 people will buy it. And so if you want that deal, you're responsible for marketing it to enough people that they all buy it, and then the deal closes and everybody gets it. So we started thinking about, how do we build that kind of a model into that last minute vacation home? What we ended up doing, rather than building anything, was we set up a MailChimp list of all the people that we could think of who might be interested in this. We set up a web page talking about what we were doing and how we were selling last minute vacation homes in the Lake Tahoe area. And we started getting that in front of as many people as we could. And every Tuesday we'd look at what was available, and we would figure out what the best we could do was, and we would send out a mass MailChimp email, and then we would take inquiries via email, and we would do the actual work manually. And there was some interesting success. That was a way more useful plan than what we had been doing, trying to build a software package to optimize the shoe leather work that people were doing. But we didn't build software to do that. We built a mailing list, and we did everything by hand. And that's one of the first things that I would suggest to people is in most circumstances, the work that you're trying to do isn't technology. The technology facilitates scaling it and doing it in a broader scale. But in most circumstances, you are trying to do something that is a person-to-person business transaction. And that transaction, you need to know exactly what that looks like, exactly how the software can do it before you engage somebody like our firm. If you come to us and say, this is exactly what I want to build, and we tell you, oh, you should. Well, I've got one client right now that I told he shouldn't try to build the software unless he has $2 million ready to do it. Not because it's a bad idea, but because it's a really complicated, hard thing to build, and there are a lot of unknowns. But if you show up and I say it's going to cost you $250,000 to build something, you should be ready to say, well, I'm not even sure this is going to work, and then you should figure out if it's going to work. That's the first thing that you should do before you start building software.
And going forward from that, obviously there's, what they call low code or no code tools now. There's a lot of things out there that, like phase one, well, step one is, okay, what is the problem solution you're looking to bring? What is the problem you want to fix? What's the solution that you're putting together? The next step is really doing that in a very cost-effective, as fast as possible. So we can even now go down the road of MVP, so minimum viable product. What are your thoughts around, achieving that in a way that, it's basically before they would engage in a conversation, or maybe the early conversations with an organization like Radial, just what are your thoughts around ideas and strategies to put together an MVP that can get data and understanding before you actually engage in the time, effort, and actually capital to put software together to actually have a product?
The first thing that I would say is the first thing you need is a web page, a one-page website that clearly explains what you're doing. 2 sentences, elevator pitch. You get 2 sentences to explain what it is you're doing. And then the hack is you stick an email, like an email address, sign up. You want to get on the beta testers list, sign up here. That'll tell you right there if you've got people interested in the problem that you're trying to solve. You might get 10 people signing up over the course of 2 weeks, or you might see 40,000 people sign up in 24 hours. One of those situations is a much better situation than the other. So you look at something like that, which you can do. There are sites out there that specialize in just building you a landing page that'll let you do that. You can do that with Wix or Squarespace, and you don't need a big time graphic design firm. You don't need a web developer to establish that. The second thing is to really almost do that Six Sigma practice of the 5 whys. Why are we doing it this way? Why is this important? Why is that something that needs to be done? Really drill down until you get to the point where you understand the central most piece of the problem that you're trying to solve. And from there, the solution there is how do I address that with the minimum amount of work possible? And maybe that's you set up a WordPress site. Maybe that's you use Wix or you go to Shopify, or there are 100 ways to do these things that allow you to start understanding where your vision fits in the marketplace. Look at what your competitors are doing. Look at where they're going, and don't spend any money that you absolutely positively can avoid spending. $100 on a website on a few months of WordPress.com is an infinitely better way to spend your money than calling a development shop and agreeing to a $10,000 job for the people often overestimate how important it is to put out a clean, professional, beautiful site. If you're solving a problem that somebody else has, they don't care what the graphics look like. They care, when can I have this and how do I give you money so that you can keep doing this. So absolutely do the minimum possible, spend as little money as you possibly can, and then be aware that in 12 months, in the best of circumstances, you're going to come back and look at the money that you spent on the technology, and you're going to realize all of this stuff needs to be rebuilt because I now understand my market. I now understand my customers. I now know what I need to do, and this tangle of wires that represents all of the things that I tried and didn't end up doing. You're going to want to just throw that bundle away and start by saying this wire goes to here, this, and it ends there, and this one goes here and it ends there. And rather than trying to untangle one, it's often just easier to say, okay, here, let's start again from zero.
Yeah.
And that might be the time that you want to call Radial. When you understand your market, when you understand exactly what you need, and and how you've done it, and how you need to move forward. That might be the time it's worth calling somebody and saying, I've got that $2 million that I need to spend on this thing that is real, and this market opportunity that is amazing. So yeah, do as little as you can.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. And hey, I want to remind you all that are listening and watching, if you have a question, definitely feel free to either type it in the chat, or even just raise your hand. We can bring you in. We want to answer your questions. If you have any questions on, you might not even have a product yet, you're thinking about it, or you're in the middle of this, project that you're building and you have some questions. So feel free. What would you say is, we kind of talked about what you should do, or thoughts on, that was great advice on, really putting together that early MVP. What are the biggest mistakes that you just see, even just being around startups for so long? Technically speaking, as they're approaching the product, is there any kind of big mistakes that you see that happens a lot that you say, hey, stay away from that?
We could do an entire series about the classic blunders of starting a company, including everything from starting your company as an LLC, little teeny things like that you'd be shocked how often I see that problem. But the biggest and probably the most threatening problem that I see, and I see this one over and over and over, is premature optimization. Is a founder will come in and they'll talk about the ways in which they think the platform might become expensive. A good example of this is a company I consulted with for a couple of years in 2014, 15. They were doing a sort of Snapchat style video photo chat system with some changes, and realistically, anybody thinking about that realizes that at some point storing all of those images and those videos is going to become really expensive. And so they went and they picked a database that they could use that would solve that problem and let them have direct control over the size and the locations of that storage. The consequence of that was they picked a database that I was in a room of CTOs having lunch last week, and I asked 15 CTOs how many had heard of this database system, and 3 of them had. And so the technical skill required to work with a system like that is it wasn't particularly hard, but you don't have a big pool of people who know the system. But the thing that they had done was used a database that it required 3 different database queries in order for someone to log in, versus using standard databases, MySQL or Postgres or even MongoDB or the various big ones. It's not hard to look somebody up based on their email address or their username. But it was in this particular circumstance because this database was designed to be super efficient at doing this one thing, which was storing large files or large objects of data. And so they imagined that they were going to have a cost problem down the road, and rather than just saying, okay, this problem is going to exist, and if we're super successful in 18 months, it's going to exist. We need to be aware. They solved it, and the consequence of solving it was, for 2 years, we kept hiring senior engineers who would show up, take the job, start messing with the code base, and then saying, I got another job offer, I'm going to go do something else, because it was extraordinarily difficult. So the big advice: don't solve problems you don't have today. And then when you have the problem, figure out whether you need to solve it technically or by just tossing some money at the problem.
Oh, that's such an interesting, it's an interesting story that, I think that there's a variety of different examples of that. And kind of going back to what we said earlier, part of the theme here, everyone, is, yeah, don't get ahead of yourself in a weird way. Look, building something to get feedback and data to tell you if you're actually hitting, if your solution is actually the right one, or people are going to use it, there's actually a problem in the market, it's attractive, end users or customers are wanting to actually use it. And you can do that in so many different ways, and doing that in ways that are cost efficient. They're very quick and fast. So you're, speed to market of just getting that early product together, so that you're not spending 6 months, a year, and hundreds of thousands of dollars to then learn, oh, it's actually not the right solution, or this is actually not a problem. Okay. And so then what Dave just said was, hey, and by the way, even if you're kind of onto something, don't anticipate, right now, don't make those decisions that will slow you down, will actually scare away the talent that you need to build it. There's just so many things there that you got to consider, but just not getting ahead of yourself is probably maybe the way to sum that up, right?
The one other thing, yeah, I mean, the one other thing that I would say is you're never going to be happy with the first version of the product that you put in front of people. You're always going to be a little bit ashamed of some corner of it. You're gonna judge yourself far more harshly than the rest of the world will. I mean, the internet's pretty good at judging people, but if you think you're solving a problem and you're constantly, I need to clean this one thing up before I release it to the public, you got to stop that. As soon as you've got the core of your idea functioning, let people show you the way you're wrong. Not tell you, but show you. Use Google Analytics. Watch the pages they look at on your stuff. Watch the things that they do. Set up pages and let people sign up for betas. Do things to figure out what people want, what people are going to do. Eventually, if there's a real kernel of a business in what you're trying to do, you're going to find that one thing that everybody will say, not just oh, I'd use that, but where do I sign? Where do I subscribe? How do I give you money? How do I do this? And that moment is just amazing. That moment where somebody says, how do I give you money for this product? I need it to exist. I need to use it today. What do I do? And when you find that, that's when you sit down and you say, okay, how much of this do I have to put on my credit card, because I need to build that thing right now. So,
yeah. Awesome. Again, if anyone has any questions, definitely would love to hear them. Let's see. So, are there tools out there right now that you appreciate, and really encourage early stage companies to utilize, whether that's like things like Airtable that's out there, other tools that are very advantageous, and especially for a team that's agile and they're just getting going, and they might not have a huge budget to get that going first. Like, anything that popped to your mind that you suggest that they should take a look at?
We've gone through tons and tons of really cool tools. I've used Notion a lot. I'm a real big fan of that, but Airtable is pretty much, they're pretty much direct competitors. I just know the guys that started Notion, and so I started using it with them. But we're devotees of Google Docs, but you can be a Word person, a Microsoft person too. We Um, I'm a big fan of Squarespace over Wix, but that probably comes down to which one did I touch first, and which one do I feel more comfortable about. Um, I I am a big fan of a whole host of low code solutions. Our company does a lot of hybrid mobile apps where we build a website that we can package inside a wrapper so that we can distribute native applications. Uh, there are a whole host of those tools that are sort of the low code, the shortcuts to building things. They all end up with sort of a problem at some scale where the solution is often it's more simple to rewrite a stack using native tools, but I love Zapier. I love IFTTT, which is basically the same sort of a thing as Zapier. Um, uh, I can't say enough good things about Stripe. Calendly is amazing. Airtable's great. Figma and Canva are spectacular. I would also toss in there Fiverr. If you can get somebody cheap to manually do the thing that you need to get done, that's often better than building technology. Amazon's Mechanical Turk project, where you can pretty much, if you can give somebody a process, they'll follow it, and you'll pay them basically for their time. You know, the best low code no code that I can think of is figuring out what you actually have to do in code, and whether paying somebody $200 an hour for 1,000 hours, whether that actually is what you should do versus paying somebody $20 an hour for those 1,000 hours. There's a degree of magnitude that's different there, and so use your money as cheaply and easily as you can.
And if you see there, we put the list in the chat. I will say that a lot of Founders Live has been built with those tools, and all over the world, you can build something that reaches every corner of the world. And you can do that with a lot of the tools that are out there now. And so I think part of the message here today is really understanding that how to get to the point of engaging a software development partner such as Radial. There's a huge phase before that. And, thankfully, Dave's here saying, hey, don't even pay us right now. If you're in that phase of, you need to prove you need to take what you've learned from the market, get that customer research and really understanding what's really needed. And then you look at these tools out there where when you look at like Airtable being something that is really it's a cloud structured, it's a database that there's many ways you can use Airtable from. I think the beauty is they actually have, it's a database on the cloud, and it's a spreadsheet that you can do many things, and you can have a form intake that externally people can fill out that then falls into the database. And then now you can do things with that stuff. And then when you think about Zapier, which is essentially connecting various products and APIs together, boom, boom, boom. Now you're shooting, you're having it filled out or interacted here, and it then connects and then does something over here. You're wiring things together. Look, Google Sheets, Google Docs, great. Stripe allows you to, collect payments and all that. Figma looking at design, and just when you look at all those, or businesses can be built, especially in the first phase, with, just small monthly subscriptions to these things. And the moment you then are at a point where you're saying, oh, okay, we've figured out a market need. They're engaging with us. We're generating revenue. We have a business case. Then that might be the point where some investment is raised. And now you have a significant budget to then take what, you've got a product, you've got the MVP. Now it's time to really build the big version of that product, the next phase of that product, and the IP that you have. So I hope that answered the question. But that's a lot of great options for these no code, low code stuff. So great. Yeah.
Yeah. If you can do it without engaging a software engineer, you completely should. And so I'm happy to help as personally, and our team, we're happy to help and to say, don't hire us, use this. Mm-hmm. Come back if this works, but don't hire us today, do this. And so
awesome. Kristen has a question around really a difference between Adobe XD versus Figma. Dave, are you familiar with Adobe and the XD?
I give Adobe a lot of money every year. I don't know that I could operate without Photoshop and Illustrator at a bare minimum. But my general take there is whatever you think you want to use, whatever you're more comfortable in that space. They're doing largely the same things. I like Figma's ability to do things in that sort of like pencil drawing idea, because one of the things that the closer you get to actual comps of the solution that you're trying to build, the more likely somebody is to have a meeting about the colors, which won't get you anywhere closer to an effective product. And so if you can do all the conversation about the function from line drawings, things sketched out on a book, Figma, but you can do that with Adobe XD too. So it's just been, as an engineer, it's been a constant struggle for me over years to work with my co-founders who wanted to argue about, well, I don't like the color for those menu things, when that's a trivial change and there's a whole bunch of angst about it, but it really derails the building of the functionality. And so use whichever you like. I think Figma is probably a little bit cheaper at the beginning, but then it probably becomes a second expense if you've also got the Creative Cloud. So I don't know. What I would add,
this is great. What I would add, I'm not tremendously familiar with the Adobe product just because, I haven't used that traditionally. When you think about Figma, maybe the thought here, and again, I'm just kind of poking in on this, but if you're going to collaborate with a team, when you look at Figma, which is mostly, if not all, web accessed, web-based, and then collaborative from really the start, when you go to Figma, nothing great is made alone. So their whole thing is, hey, it's a web-based design tool, but it's also collaborative, and they've baked that into the beginning where you're going to be using this as a team. You might want to think about what are the ways that we're going to use this. If you're using something just by yourself at this point, and maybe you think that that's the only use case is it's going to be by yourself, you can then choose between a few options based on what you like, as well as like, is it downloaded on your device? Is it an app? Or is it a web-based accessed thing? But if you're collaborating and you're having your team all use it, and things are shifting and changing all the time, you probably want to really look at something that anyone can access and all have all has, they have a sign in and access to the project on something like Figma or whatnot. And maybe that's available to Adobe as well. But I think Adobe is a bit of a higher hurdle to expect that everyone has access to it, or purchase the app or product or whatever. So those are my quick thoughts. But each team makes their own choice on those product choices. But that's a really good question. Awesome. Yeah, we have another question. Kristen's got another question about, so Dave, how much of the Radial team is outside the US, and maybe talk a little bit more about, the team as well as like the developers that you employ there. What does the initial consultation look like in terms of guidance provided at the validation stage of the startup? So maybe there's two questions there to address.
So the first question we have is well, our entire team is U.S. engineers. We generally try to keep things onshore as much as we can. So we've got a couple of people on the East Coast. We got a couple of people on the West Coast. We've got one guy who's living in a Unabomber style cabin in the middle of Montana. Although maybe I shouldn't say that. But a lot of people in Colorado. So we're relatively close to East Coast, West Coast time zones. We can work with that. But as far as initial consultation goes, I am happy to send a mutual non-disclosure agreement to anybody, and to give all of the advice that I possibly can, or to introduce you to developers on our team who they may be time constrained, but taking a meeting here and there, for the most part, we try to keep everybody. Best case solution for us is that we're billing around 30 hours a week of a 40-hour time. That's if everything is going as crazy as we can. We'd really like to keep that at about 24 to 26 hours. So there's basically a day every week that somebody could spend talking to people about their experiences, giving people advice. And so at the end of the day, a startup looking for guidance about how to validate the idea, I'm happy to help. Ben, the co-founder, is happy to help. Marshall, I'm not sure what his title is, but he was a co-founder, and he's the sort of spiritual Sherpa for our coding practices. He's happy to engage and talk. So I wouldn't throw a bill out at that point. At some point, you might be using more of our time than we can actually give you. And at that point, there's a conversation of well, can I have this much time on a weekly or monthly basis, and maybe that needs to come with a price tag. But at the end of the day, we're happy to engage and do a non-disclosure and give you all the advice we possibly can.
Awesome. And then how many digital health apps have the team worked on? Meaning how much healthcare expertise in the specific industry of maybe digital health and healthcare?
We've done a couple or three projects there. We, up until about a week ago, we had two HIPAA, what's the term? Compliance agents, compliance officers on the team. We don't have any real problems working in that side. We're happy to do BAA agreements and we understand HIPAA to the degree that I think we mostly need to. But in general, I don't know that we have any really, really strong predilections for any industry in particular. I wouldn't engage us in a way that expects us to do design for consumers. I think that our team's got some skills in designing and implementing for business to business, and we can certainly implement for business to consumer. But I think that there are better people out there who do user experience and who design systems for business to consumer than we do. But we've got a couple of partners on our list that we tend to work with pretty seamlessly, and so I hope that two-sided marketplaces, really my advice to that is really avoid that. If you can avoid a two-sided marketplace, totally do. Solve one of the problems. That's my personal experience. The last startup that I started was a quintessential two-sided marketplace, and everybody I talked to said, "Well, what about the other side? I need this."
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is good. Maybe another or an additional way to say that is naturally there might end up being two sides, or a marketplace that you have these solutions on both sides. I agree with you, Dave. Choose one and lean into that. You could look at Founders Live Founders Live is really a multi-sided marketplace in many ways. We have, founders and startups, like some of you on here are watching, you're the founder, you're building. We have, companies such as Radial Development Group, and, Dave's sitting right here, partners, basically. So essentially companies that serve you all startups. That's one other side of the market. There's the investment side. Investors are looking for the early stage startups to invest in. And quite frankly, what the question could be determined, what is an investor? And we're actually exploring how to, expand that answer to not just accredited investors. In some ways, we have audience, right? There's people that show up to our events or watch our shows or anything of that nature that are an audience. They don't even fit in those segments that I just described. So that's a multi-sided marketplace. Clearly, strategy-wise, you have to nail down one of them and really understand how you're going to drive business with that, and then understand the other sides and how they play into that marketplace. So that's the only thing I would add to what you said, Dave, is like, you got to pick one, find burning problems and offer great solutions, and know that there's other parties involved in that marketplace.
Yeah, but I was trying to explain to somebody what retirement for me looks like, and realistically, I can't see retirement for me looking anything like anything different than what I do now, which is sort of gleefully jumping into how can I help build this thing that somebody's so passionate about. And so that two-sided marketplace, that multi-sided marketplace that is the startup ecosystem, you can dive into those things, but you need to solve one problem for one customer before you can solve the problem of connecting to customers, because but that's and I think Kristen's question about two-sided marketplaces is really apt, particularly in the healthcare space, because that's a market that is weird, because in most circumstances consumers are not actually paying for the services that they're getting, and so there's this weird intermediated marketplace that exists in healthcare that I'm not, that it makes it significantly harder. So.
Yeah. Well, all right. We are just getting out of time here. We've reached the end of the hour. So I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you all for watching this, if you're watching it later. And lastly, Dave, just so much appreciate your support, Radial Development Group's support as a partner of Founders Live. And we just really appreciate what has been created here in terms of our partnership and working together, and just so much more going forward as well.
I appreciate the opportunity to be part of the community. I like I said, I love this stuff, and I can't imagine not doing this. So thank you for the opportunity, and I'm around, I'll be at some of the events over the summer, and we'll have a great time getting to know each other. So,
all right. Well, thank you all. Enjoy the rest
Cheers.
of your day, and that is it for today.